There've been a lot of rumours, there's been a lot of speculation about the site, but the plans have been available on the council planning page for quite a while, and I wanted to talk to you about what we're actually going to do and what our aim is for the site and how we plan to do the work. So what's especially important to me is why I want to do a restoration job on this site as opposed to development. Nothing is being knocked down, nothing is being removed. There are no blocks of flats being built, so I want to reassure everyone of that. But let me start by introducing myself and sharing a little bit of history with you before we get into the facts. So my name, as you know, is Alex Legendre, and you might have already heard of me. I have met quite a few local people on the site in New Road, and we've spoken about the restoration of that building as people have watched it unravel. There's been scaffolding up and they've seen a lot of the work that's been going on. Well, I moved to Shoreham a little over 10 years ago with my family, and we kind of discovered this lovely little village by the river, by the downs, by the sea, and we cherish it very, very much. So much so we have a little business in Shoreham. You know, it's a very important place to us. Previously, we rented a flat in Central Hove for most of my adult life, bringing up our daughter. But one day, while scouring one of the many property sites that I have the unfortunate addiction of scouring, I stumbled across a lone photo of a shabby doorway in Weston Road in Shoreham. Now, this property just drew me in, seeing a picture of this door, and I had to investigate. I had no intention to move, very little money to even consider buying a house. We lived in a rented flat. So I, of course, jumped and rang the agent and made an appointment to view it. And for whatever reason, fate was on my side. And 4 months later, I had the keys to my very first property, which was quite miraculous, really. Circumstances that had driven me to feeling so passionate about the property were that I worked on clients' houses for a living. But my job was kind of crushing me because I couldn't exert the creativity and energy for myself within my own home. So once I had the keys, I could create and restore my first real home. And this was in Weston Road, Shoreham. Now, it had been lived in by the same man since birth, and he died when he was 103, and he sold the house to me when he was 102. So from that house and knowing its history and feeling the responsibility of being a custodian of that property, you know, I take that responsibility very seriously. I've always loved history. I've always loved the history of art, architecture, people fascinate me, history of it, everything in a town. I grew up surrounded by antiques, and buying and selling was a very big part of my life, my family's life. My stepfather was an antique dealer in Hove, and we lived in Penrose Square. I spent, I suppose, most of my childhood romanticizing about these historical objects, and I suppose that's where my passion started, with the objects, and that's kind of where it comes from for me. It's romantic, it's a responsibility, and you become the custodian of these things. Now, I changed my whole life to accommodate this project in Shoreham. I closed my business in Hove in 2022, and I've dedicated myself to this site now for over a year before the sale even went through. I worked on the planning and worked at every possible stage to try to find investors and partners and people that could make this happen. I have pretty much myself invested everything that I can personally, my time, my energy, and my finances. My partners now in the company trust my work based on the previous work that I can show them a portfolio working on other people's properties or doing you know, the physical work myself. But I feel that the responsibility for them, that I owe them and that I owe the local community, is huge. But I have complete faith, and with local support, hopefully, we have the opportunity to finish this project within budget and win over anyone that's sceptical, making the investors happy enough so that we can do more restorative work on lots of local historical buildings. We are not just developers. This isn't about making money for me. The restoration is key. It's not about demolition. So there's an image here of a little house in Brighton that I worked on very long time ago, and it's a historical house. It was very dilapidated. It's in Queen's Gardens, and if you were to Google the little house in Brighton, you will see a lot of information about it, because the restoration was completely compassionately done, sympathetic to the period, and everything in the house is pretty much reclaimed. All the fireplaces, the sink, the railings, nothing was in existence. I have been working in this field for a really long time, and the site in Shoreham is the largest that I would have ever kind of overseen. It kind of really is large because of the number of properties over the scale of the plot. And it's not just Chantry House, there are other buildings. But I have worked on several very large period properties historically in Chelsea, Primrose Hill, locally in Brighton, Horsham, Hove, Sompting, and of course numerous others in Shoreham. There's a slide here of Norfolk House. Norfolk House is in Hurstbeard Point. This is one of my kind of most proud projects. I won Heritage Awards, so it's an award with Stat Building Company, who I work on specialist historical restoration, and we won the award for historical preservation for this. And that's, you know, that's kind of proof of the direction that this comes from for me. So here we are, nearly a decade after falling in love with the old HSBC bank, which you're all pretty familiar with, in East Street. And I knew that this building needed to be restored with kind of, you know, with love, with sympathetic attention to detail, because you can see the bones of the building are there, but it looks quite sad and quite tired. And it's in one of the most prestigious streets in the town, and it's just sat there empty, looking rather tired. I dreamt about what we could do. I sat with numerous friends, and I have lots of female friends that are businesswomen locally. We dreamt up hotels and spa hotels, and thinking about how wonderful it would be. But to gather that kind of funding to just open a business is not a reality, and to get investment for property is a whole different world, as I kind of discovered. So eventually it was, how can I get the right backing for the project to restore this back into homes? And eventually I became acquainted with Jim Partridge, whose family had lived in the house historically. Jim's daughter, we made friends, and she's also called Alex, and she wrote this lovely letter of support recently, having seen some of the work and the commitment, and also coming to look at the first house that we were working on in New Road. Her support, really, it means the world. And to have a letter like this from someone that grew up in that house is, you know, more than its weight in gold. It expresses everything that I kind of want to convey to all of you and anyone that's concerned. You know, I'd often joked about being able to buy the house, and of course I didn't really have a clue about all of the cost, the huge cost, the huge planning, the considerable amount of work that you have to do even before the purchase. So to get to this stage is quite a big deal for me, and I never really lost faith, or I didn't give up. I kept thinking, actually, I really want to do this. I want to do a fantastic job. I started to research more about the house as it kind of became more tangible, and discovered this earlier image, which completely captivated me. To see the house in total glory, with the railings back before the war, and obviously they were removed then, as they were all over the town, every town in the England actually. I feel that you'll agree this is a stunningly handsome house, and, you know, a really important site for Shoreham. A local historian, he also dug out a second image with the ivy growing up, which I thought was quite amazing. And you can see in the distance that you're kind of transported back in time, before even the shops were there. There's just the houses behind. Even the dentist is covered in ivy there. And then fast forwarding to today, and after some seriously hard work and a lot of trust, a lot of investment, here we are, and we are at New Road. Now, a lot of you may have been past, and you'll see that we are doing a top-to-toe renovation. The whole house has seriously been in need of love. It was very neglected for decades. We discovered the original panelling inside. You can see all the nail marks, and it had cloth nailed to it, and then layer upon layer of plasterboard. So taking everything back really carefully to see what we could find, we found fireplaces, and then we found a cellar, which we didn't know was there. We have restored, renovated all of those aspects of the house. We have taken out the UPVC, replaced it with solid timber, and sashed windows have been reinstated. We hacked off all of the flaky white paint to reveal the original render, which we aim to keep a section of. So on the right of your screen, you'll see there's a side section, and this is the kind of the most well kept. So we're going to try to keep that revealed, and then paint the rest of the property in heritage colours. This is basically a template for the rest of the site. So what we're doing here is what's going to happen in the bank. We're going to strip it back, find out what we find, work with what we can, reinstate what we can, and source the reclaimed materials to bring the house back to life in its authentic form. That's kind of one of the things that's most important to me. The materials that we use were a condition of the planning, and we happily and proudly submitted all of the materials to the planning officer. So solid hardwood windows and doors throughout of all the existing buildings, brickwork and render where necessary, roofing tiles to be replaced like for like and reclaimed where possible, no plastic, no UPVC, and no MDF. Metal gunpowder, not gunpowder, that's not true. Metal powder coated gutters and downpipes, all in heritage colours for all of the outsides, and breathable paints will be used on the inside of the houses. These houses were built with bungalow roof, as if anyone knows locally, their house probably was too. And that has to breathe. That's why the render's falling off the outside, because of the synthetic paints on the inside and the outside. The house has to breathe. So our aim is to do all of these jobs correctly. Hopefully you'll be able to see and approve of the house when it's completed by spring. The overall aim is to make these once beautiful houses livable and lovable, and they're right in the heart of the town. And that's the biggest aim for the restoration. Now, north and adjacent to the building in East Street, the old bank, we're calling it, Chantry House, we have planning consent to create 1 to 2 retail shops with access from East Street, with a lovely, generous masonette above. The living space in that masonette overlooks the church and the churchyard. It's a wonderful aspect. To the rear of the site, which is accessible from New Road, we aim to build some new houses, and hopefully with some of your help, we'll get to in a minute, I'll ask you for your help. We can decide what that should be. Now, the plans for the new build aspect of the project raise the dilemma of designing a new build property. And this isn't an easy task when you actually kind of strip it down and you're responsible for it, because there's a dilemma of building something new. When we approached the first planning meeting, our pre-app meeting, we took photos and drawings of these houses in Ham Road, opposite the Co-op. You're probably familiar with them. Now, the images on the last set here with the darker roofs, those were new. They're new build. They were replicated of the ones that were there. So you can see these houses can be rebuilt. But the dilemma, I suppose, is in the pre-app, it was suggested by the council that we did something more modern. So originally we'd thought of using the cottage in New Road as a template for the houses that we would build at the rear of New Road. So we came back to a second pre-app meeting with our timber-clad contemporary houses, 3 houses. And this design, was taken with inspiration from seasides and fishing towns along the coast. But this was met with quite a lot of local opposition. So then we're left with a conundrum. Does nostalgia have a place in a new build property? Because as a person that loves historical buildings, I feel it's only natural to recreate something in an older style to sit within the historical landscape. But the question that I'm going to ask your help with here is, should we acknowledge the future on the outside of a new build as well as on the inside for modern living? Should that be a factor? So that's something to think about. The considerations for the community. Well, we have been granted permission by the highways. They feel very satisfied with our plans for access and parking strategy. So that was passed already. And we have worked with the council and Southern Water with regards to drainage. I know that that was a concern that was raised. The surveys that have already been completed state that we will not only reduce the surface water considerably by the use of our landscaping, and by not adding a soakaway, we pose no threat of damage to buildings in close proximity. So this isn't my field of expertise. One of my partners that's working on the project, he is actually a hydro engineer. Now, he will be more than happy to explain this in way more technical detail than I could ever begin to. So if there are serious questions about this, please forward them to me and I will give a response to you from him, or he will contact you directly, because I don't want to get it wrong. And he is the person in charge of that area. Now, our hydro CCTV surveys also discovered several drains were blocked and sewers were damaged, drains, so there was issues with both. And we are working with Southern Water to have these cleared and repaired. Now, we're doing that because we don't want to wait for Southern Water to come and say that they're going to do it, they're going to do it. It's hard enough to get them to come out. So we've said that we will pay for those things to be done as you know, means of progress. And I'd like to find your feedback, you know, on all of those points. It'd be really, really good to get your questions, and hopefully I can answer some. And if I can't answer them, well, I'll take them away with me and we'll get some answers to you by email. Thank you very much.